What's up, game players? Really quickly, I have to do this before the podcast starts. I want to give you guys a disclaimer. Now, this podcast, this Plus Edition episode, goes roughly about an hour and 20 minutes. Now, you guys know usually I try to keep it between 30 and 35 minutes, but this week's guest was such an awesome guest. Shout out to Goose. We went into indie development, some of the things that evolve around that, as well as things that go on in the industry itself. So I encourage you guys to listen to the full episode of the podcast, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Hopefully you will. But with that being said, let's jump right into it, game players. Here we go. And I would like to welcome you guys to another episode of the Plus Edition of the Analog Circle podcast. Now, you guys know when it's the Plus Edition, I am not by myself, and today is no exception. I have a very special guest today. This gentleman has actually spread the word about the Analog Circle podcast. He actually he spread the word so much that the legend, the email legend as I call him, Mr. Cody Clark, actually discovered the show through him. And I mean, he's actually spread the word on other podcasts, Game Enthused, as well as, I cannot remember the name of his show. Is such a disrespect to his show, but Colin's show. Anyway, I just want to welcome to the show Mr. Goosens. How is it going, Mr. Goose? Welcome to the show, brother. Thank you for being on. Thank you so much.
At long last.
Man, it's been a long time. My goodness. Like I said before, I owe you so many thanks. Matter of fact, Goose, could you tell the listeners out there, what is the name of Colin's show again? Shout out to him. God, dog.
The Pressure Cast.
The
Colin
Pressure
Tanner.
Cast.
There you go.
Golly. Shout out to Colin Tanner for his show. You guys should definitely check out his podcast. It is an amazing video game podcast. But Mr. Goose, some of you guys might not know this. Matter of fact, y'all probably don't know this, and I don't know how you would. But Mr. Goose is actually, you know what, Mr. Goose, I think you should tell the people, what is it that you do, sir?
Well, I'm a part-time indie developer. I've put out titles originally on the Xbox Live indie games, and then eventually got kind of promoted up out of it by Microsoft to make official, like an actual real, with achievements indie game on Windows Phone, and then we moved over and published on Google, and the last place we had our games out was actually in certain select McDonald's restaurants. You can play it for free on some, if you have a McDonald's that has tablets, then one of our games, Gerbil Physics, is available to be played for free there. But by day, I'm a patent clerk, so woo.
Well, that's pretty awesome as well, by the way. But, man, you know what? This is so amazing to me, Goose. I've always wondered, what is it like to be an indie developer? And we're going to get into that in just a bit because, oh, my goodness, it's something I wanted to do. I didn't do it, but that's a whole nother story. But before we get into that, Goose, let me ask you something, sir. I got a couple of questions. What actually got Mr. Goose into gaming? What was that thing that pushed you over and said, hey, this is something that I enjoy, this is it?
Oh, the very, very, very beginning?
I mean, we can start at the origin if you have time.
I thought you were talking about the when I started doing like indie gaming or whatnot. But the very origin was I was born and bred on like DOS-based computers. I'm like the super old Methuselah who knows what it was like to open up a barn door to put in a disc. My dad was the owner and sysop of a RBBS called Your Place remote bulletin board system. That was in the major DC metropolitan area. So when I was a kid, I I kind of had everything. It was like the internet before the internet, and it was in my house. So people would call in on dial-up modems and spend all day and all weekend uploading all sorts of games and files and images and text files and like digital books before that was even a thing, all onto remote bulletin board systems. It's kind of like, imagine the internet getting sliced up into all of its pieces, and if, like, say, eBay had its own phone number and you had to dial in to eBay to go in and bid on some auctions and then hang up the phone when you're done. So I had all the early days of all the, like, shareware games way back in the day. I had them in my house. So when, like, Doom came out, it was uploaded to my father's RBBS, and all I had to do was copy it onto a disk and install it, whereas all my friends were spending weeks and weeks and weeks going like, oh, I've got disc 3, and they're asking their friends, who's got disc 4 downloaded, and everyone's sharing discs at, like, the lunch table, and I'm the one guy who's just like, oh, I just downloaded all of it off my dad's RBBS and just played it, you know?
Jeez,
So it was a huge advantage for having games and everything, you know, like all sorts of forgotten things, like all the Commander Keen and the Captain Cosmic and all the old Apogee, and before Epic was Epic, when they were Epic Mega Games, it's like I knew them then.
Ooh, man! Yeah, you got me beat, Goose. I can't lie. Oh my goodness! Now I too do come from that DOS era where you had to put in the C semicolon and, you know, typing it in to get the game to work. Yeah, man, I definitely come from that era of PC gaming. And just to know that, my goodness, you had this type of access to this, that is mind-blowing. I mean, absolutely amazing. So you get that point. You get to that point and you're downloading it. By the way, I remember Doom. I remember having that shareware disc. It was pretty awesome, by the way. But so you move from that. So predominantly growing up, Goose, were you mainly a PC guy, or did you actually play on console as well?
It was primarily PC. It took me a while before I started getting consoles. Like, I got one of my best friends, he had a Nintendo, and eventually he got tired of it, and he just gave it to me. And I started getting all my console games secondhand and, you know, shopping smart, so I'd go to, like, yard sales and flea markets. And, you know, there was always a kid in a garage who had, you know, whatever system, a Genesis, a Sega Master System, and usually the price every kid wanted, you know, underpriced it and was just like, you know, $20 for the system and then a shoebox filled with cartridges for $20. And my allowance was $20, and I'd save it up for a couple weeks, so I'd go to a yard sale and just pick up a gigantic shoebox of Nintendo cartridges and just sit there playing games that way. But I was never very good at console games. It always irritated me because it was like, you know, you always had to beat the whole game in one sit down. Otherwise, it was like some games would have a password and the very rare one would have a chip for actually saving your game. But I preferred PC gaming because PC always had the advantage of being able to save anywhere. And also, from my father and programming and everything, he taught me how to hack games. So when I played Castlevania, the PC version, I edited my health bar and gave myself so much health that the game couldn't display all of it. It was just a bunch of squares all over the screen. And I couldn't see anything, and I had to jump around for a minute on a blank screen just to like a windshield wiper, like a squeegee, just wiping away my health bars. They were still there, but I had to make it so I could see them. And then I hacked in the time freeze and put like, I think it was 64,000 units of time freeze on the bottom of the screen. So I could just, you know, at any point I could just pause the game and throw boomerangs into everything and then unpause the game and run through it as a total cheater. So that's the way I did a lot of my DOS-based games, was eventually like I'd play through a game first the real way, and then I'd go through, and if like you saw any of my big box DOS-based games, it's like if you open them up, there's mountains of graph paper at the top where I figured out all the hex addresses of all the values that mattered and just hacked my games to pieces.
Gosh, Goose, that is mind-blowing, brother. I have to tell you, I have never met a game player that actually knew how to hack. I mean, literally and legit be able to hack a game. That is unbelievable, man.
Well, sometimes it was a necessity, like the Double Dragon 2 on PC. The disc came, you remember the old discs where you had to write protect them? There was that little switch on the 3.5-inch diskette where you write protect it so you don't write protect it, or move it over so you can actually write to the disc.
Right.
My disc for Double Dragon 2 came not write protected, and I didn't know that was vital to the game. So if you put the disc in with it without the write protection turned on, flipping that little switch, you have 2 continues. And if you die and use a continue, that's forever. It writes it to the disc and goes from 2 to 1 and 1 to 0.
Oh my goodness!
I invited one of my buddies over to play Double Dragon 2 on PC, and he wanted to play it on console. I was like, no, let's play it on PC. It'll be cool on PC. Yay, PC. And we booted up, and I've got 0 continues. And sitting there, and like immediately we die. We don't even get to that stupid hay baler that just instant kills you. If you remember that garbage.
Yes.
And so we were sitting there, and I was like, he's like, where's the continues? And I was like, I thought we had 2, and we had 0. And forever the disc had 0 continues. And I had to go in and try to find every instance of 0 and hack every instance up until I found the continues and just hacked it all the way up to 255, which was the max that could do on that game. So then inviting him back over and going, okay, we got 255 continues hacked into the game. Let's play it for real now.
Oh my!
And it took
goodness.
90 of them to get past that stupid hay baler. Oh my God!
Wow! I'm really sitting here, Goose. I'm actually very much so, and I honestly mean this. I'm floored right now. I am absolutely floored that. I mean, how old were you doing these hacks, Goose?
Sorry about that. I knocked the mic.
Oh, that's all right. That's okay. I was just asking you, Goose, how old were you during this time when you were doing these hacks, man?
I don't remember when I started, but I know it was elementary school.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah, the programs are written for me, and it was just shown. I mean, I was running DOS and Basic A applications before I was technically literate. So I knew how to do DOS. My first drawing was the hashtag. I put it on the fridge. My mom was like, you drew something. Yay, what is it? And I was like, it's a spaceship. And that's what it was in the video game. My mom was just sitting there looking really confused, like, okay, infinite mother's love for my hashtag on the refrigerator. So that was my first drawing ever.
Oh my gosh, man.
Just kind of born and bred into it, man. So always have the love for gaming.
That is amazing. Oh, go ahead, Goose. I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
But I was just going to say, I kind of fell out with PC gaming, a while back because of all the incompatibility issues with video cards and sound cards. It was just too much hassle, and that's when I kind of switched over to like more full on into console gaming. And because I like the idea of just popping in the disc or cartridge and having it just work.
Absolutely. You know what? Very, very interesting you say that too, Goose. That was actually, and I'm sure I've talked about it on the podcast before, but that's what got me out of PC gaming. Every time I would go to the store, I remember going to Electronic Boutique and going in there and actually finding Police Quest 4. For the PC, going in there when Sierra was making games with the big mountain and whatnot on top of the name. It was incredible. I went in there and I looked at the requirements and I was like, man, I am barely going to be able to run this game. I mean, barely. It was like I was maxed out. It needed like 4 megabytes of RAM. That's how long ago that was, Goose. 4 megs of RAM, man. You know, and I actually played the game and it was cool, but it was slowing down and I mean it was chugging. I said, you know what? I'm tired of going in the store that was a couple months in between. I wasn't getting the game every week back then. But having to go in there, look on the box to see if I met the requirements and all of that stuff. Then you needed a sound blaster back then because they didn't give you the sound card with the computer back then. And sound blasters were like $300. This is like back in the 90s. I'm like, oh my gosh, man, this is way too expensive. So I had a short bout with PC gaming and enjoyed it, but ultimately, similar to you, Goose, I said, this is just, it's too expensive and it's too many, what ifs, in there. I just want to get the game and pop the game in and play it. That's it. So, yeah, I definitely understand exactly how you feel about that, Goose, for sure.
Yeah, it's always that argument I hear people throwing down on various shows where they're talking about the whole, like, well, if you want the best graphics, you're going to just go to PC, just go to PC, just go to PC. And it's like, not really. It's if you want that hassle and you want, like, for some people, that's great. They love the struggle of trying to get a PC to operate and run correctly with all the games, but it's like I can't do that anymore. I don't want to sit down for 3 to 4 hours just to get it to work and be at the screen. I'm like, and do all the downloading and the patching and everything, and then you find out the PC version is the broken version, and you're like, no.
Absolutely, man. Definitely. Man, well, Goose, I think that is incredible for your, what would you call it, your origin story of getting into gaming. That is pretty awesome. So what I have to ask you now, Goose, is about your indie development, which is something that so many people want to do. I remember I had went to a Barnes & Noble's. Me and a good friend of mine, Jeremy, actually, by the way, I actually had him on the show. Me and him had went to Barnes & Noble's, and we said, you know what, man, we're going to make a game. We're going to do it. You know, and we went there, we found a book, and the book was very basic, basically almost like Flash game levels of development. We messed around with that for about a week, and we said, you know what, brother, this ain't for us. This is just not it. So my question to you, Goose, is how difficult has it or had it been for you to have actually developed the actual game that you developed when you were developing it? Good grief, that was such a looped question, but
no worries. The spoiler alert, it's rough. It's always rough. The story is there's so many angles to game design that make it such a hard and arduous road to get through. For me, the beginning of it was way back in the day was Flash. I did a lot of experimenting in Flash. Worst move I could have made was I had a lot of difficulty figuring out how to get Flash ActionScript to work, and I actually took a class in it when I was in college. This was when Flash was brand new, and the teacher was sitting there and I was showing him the work that I was doing, because like he started the class and started talking about Flash. He said, does anybody have any questions? And immediately I'm going like, okay, so when you name an instance of blah, 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 how do you make the whatever so that the variables see the XYZ? And everyone's like, what? And he's looking at me like, huh? And he's like, well, you make a call to the original draw of blah, blah, blah in an array. And I'm like, oh, and then immediately I'm just typing away at my keyboard, and he sits there talking about his class and comes over and goes, do you already know this? And I'm like, kinda. But the teacher was talking to me, and he saw like the examples of fake games I was making. Like I was just making interactive movies that looked like you were playing a video game, but you weren't. Like I could sit down in front of the computer and fake you out and make you think I was doing a game when I wasn't. And my teacher turned to me and goes, I think there's someone you should meet. And mind you, this is in Philadelphia. And he says to me, I know this guy named Dan Paladin.
What?
And, yes, of Alien Hominid / Castle Crashers fame.
And
he goes,
oh my gosh.
He tells me, he's like, you should meet this guy. He made a video game called Philly Riot Cop. And I was like, I'm kind of doing my own thing. And it was like the stupidest, like, the number one most important thing anywhere is networking. Mm-hmm. And I literally was just handed like the golden egg of networking and went like, oh, what's this? And just dumped it on the floor.
Oh my gosh.
So he was going to introduce me to Dan Paladin, and I was like, I don't need to meet people. I don't need to network. I'm a genius. And it's like, oh, the stupidest things. Which, just so you know, Philly Riot Cop was a game Dan Paladin put on Newgrounds as a reaction to the Republican National Convention when this was when George W. Bush was first going for office. And there were so many protesters to the Republican Party that everything in Philadelphia kept getting shut down. And Dan Paladin made a game where it was just from the back of the riot cop, and all you were doing was riding through the streets of Philadelphia with a baton, smacking down protesters left and right. It was really funny, and he was my teacher was so insistent. He's like, "You really should meet this Dan Paladin guy," and I was like, "No, I'm doing my own thing over here." And I was like, "I'm an idiot." That's first and foremost, I'm an idiot. So, listeners, if you are in game design, network. You never know who's going to become who versus me becoming the little small potato that I am. I was like, man, that would have been awesome to have met Dan Paladin and been able to talk to him back in the days of Newgrounds before he made Alien Hominid.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Wow.
That's
incredible, man. That is unbelievable. My goodness. So you actually... Oh, go ahead, Goose. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, from there it just became like a hobby thing that I just did on the side. I used it for web design. I did freelance web design for various like just random sites back in the day doing their Flash animations and whatnot. It paid well, but it didn't, it wasn't what made the rent. I still had to have a day job. It was just what I did for the extra pay for, kind of like what would fund video games,
Mm-hmm.
But when it came to actually becoming an indie game designer, that was when Microsoft announced the Xbox Live Indie Games. When I had heard that, my jaw just dropped on the floor. I couldn't believe that the opportunity to publish on a major platform was being literally handed to the masses, and it blew my mind. And I started looking into C# and how to program, and it was just too hard. I was just hitting the wall.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't make it happen. I was not on the end to get it down. So I went into their community, though, and still joined and still paid. They charge $100 a year to join as a developer, and I paid it and went into the forums. And I had posted and said, because I was curious because I did all the art and animation, and I said, if anyone wants art and animation, let me know. I'll gladly develop stuff, technically knowing that I probably won't get paid for it. I was like, if you can pay me, great. If you can't, I understand. Mm-hmm. And my inbox got flooded with mountains and mountains of developers, and they ranged from semi-professional stuff to just absolutely absurd. Like there was one email I got that was 0 punctuation. It was all just words in a jumble of something saying they wanted to make a real-time strategy game, and it said, here's my assets that I have. Please turn them into awesome stuff so that I can make my game and get it finished. And all of his scans were just photographs of graph paper with basic geometric shapes on it.
Oh my gosh,
really?
Like,
this was someone who paid $100 a year to go into the development community, and I was like, is this like an 8-year-old? What is, I don't get it. So I every weekend I dedicated to helping out the Xbox Live Indie Games, and I did art and animation for them. And unfortunately, all but one game that I helped became what is called vaporware. It never becomes real. So one of the games that I was most enthusiastic about that I wish had become a real thing was there was a guy who had made, this was before Infinite Runners were called Infinite Runners. He was going to make an Infinite Runner where you played a roller coaster.
That's
and
interesting.
He had video footage of it in action. You jumped the roller coaster, and there were all these, it was like a roller coaster in hell, and you were trying to jump to get as high as you could, and there were all these dragons and demons attacking you to knock your passengers out of the car, and then as you get up in the sky, it's like there were Donkey Kong gorillas with angel wings and halos throwing the barrels at you. And I was so looking forward to this game happening, and it just became vaporware. And I was like, what happened to the infinite running roller coaster one? But the one game that I helped that did make it was called Pokerball. It doesn't exist today. It's Breakout, where you're breaking out cards, which give you, that's your combo. So it's all like the jacks and queens and kings. And so if you can hit like 5 spades, it goes like, full, you can get a full house or 2 pair or whatever, and it's all the bonus points. But he forgot to incorporate the paddle physics. So like, when you hit with the left-hand side of the paddle, that makes it fly faster to the left. Apparently he didn't understand that, and it just didn't work right. So it released, and then the guy pulled it from the marketplace. I guess because everybody complained because they spent the buck to get it and what have you. But I still have the trial for it. But that's officially my first video game that ever published was Pokerball on Xbox Live Indie Games. And then the guy never gave me even a free copy of it. He never paid me if he got any money from it, and then he never even gave me one of the codes, which made me feel really sad.
Goose.
I was sitting there going I'm waiting for the flip me the buck, dude.
Exactly. I mean, good grief. I mean, you were on the front lines with it. That's the minimum he could have done, was giving you a copy.
After months and months and months of helping just vaporware again and again and almost giving up, that's when the gentleman of gentlemen, Kevin Small of Pencil Games, contacted me. And he said he had tried to contact me before, and apparently it didn't go through, and he got another artist, but he said everything fell through with that artist, and he was trying to do a physics-based demolition game in the Farseer engine, and he wanted my help. And he showed me a video, and he was the most insanely professional of all people. He had actual contracts and PDF files that he emailed to me saying he wanted me to sign non-disclosure agreements, and he had an actual, arranged payment for if there were royalties, etc., for the actual game. And he said he wanted me to take a look. Here's the non-disclosure. And I signed the non-disclosure, and he gave me the password and username to download just this Farseer engine where you're just setting up bombs and blowing up geometric shapes. And he wanted to actually sign on as an actual artist. And I appreciated also his honesty. He said his first game, which was, something Pirate Island. It was a tower defense game where you set up a whole island and then pirates start invading for loot.
Okay.
In all honesty, it wasn't very good. And even Kevin told me, he's like, it wasn't a very good game. And he said the artist that they hired straight up quit and said, you guys have no idea what the you're doing, and your heads are up so far up your bleeps. And then Kevin said, in full disclosure, he's like, we truly did not know what we were doing. And we absolutely did have our heads up our bleep. He was right. And
right.
I can't blame him for leaving, but he's like, but now we've got you. He's like, you were the original artist that we did want. And he's like, now we have you. And he's like, we've figured things out. We've made mistakes, and we're hoping we've learned from all of our mistakes. And I was like, it seems like it, because you're the most professional of everyone I've helped. I was like, the only game I've helped out of so many months, every single weekend, helping another team and another team, replacing all their assets, doing all their animation, and just nothing from it. We were doing this game it was the physics-based demolition with geometric shapes. And I was like, well, why don't we do like animals or whatever, so it's at least cutesy or something, and we can animate it, and they can panic when the bomb is near them. And we started jumping around with what type of animals to put in it, and we had voted and decided on gerbils, and that became Gerbil Physics.
Oh my goodness, really? So that's how you guys came up with the name.
Yes, and we released it, and this was before physics-based demolition became a thing, because after us, Angry Birds had come out, and Angry Birds became famous, and they're a company with a budget and marketing, etc. We're just two dudes over the internet on Skype banging heads together till a video game falls out.
Man,
jobs. So,
wow. Now, how long was the process of that, Goose? How long? Like, how many months or?
1.5 months, explicitly. Kevin was moonlighting on his job. He was between contracts, and he said he had exactly 1.5 months to make a game. And he said, we're going to do this. We're going to try and be as professional as possible, get as much as we can done in this 1.5 months, and then release it and see what happens.
That is unreal. 1.5 months.
Yep.
And banged out a game. Amazing. Go ahead, Goose. I'm sorry.
It did well. It just didn't, it didn't break any banks or anything. We started getting like actual occasional fan mail where people would be like, hey, this game's cute. We look forward to seeing the sequel. And it was, were you allowed to charge $1 back then? I think it was $1. I think we charged $1 for it. Otherwise it was, if it was back in the day when you had to charge $2.55 or $10, it would have been in the $2.50. And then when they said $1, $2.50 or $5, we did the $1. But that was 1.5 months, and that was really good for the sake of the minimal investment with a mild return, where every so often it was like every month or two we'd be or every 3 months rather, we'd get that check for like, it would boil down to about like $100 or $200 a week, and then it would dip down to like $30 or something. But eventually it died down and died out, and we were discussing the sequel. And we spent, I think, about 4 months on Gerbil Physics 2 and released it, but this is where like other stuff comes into the picture, because it's like when you make a video game, it's that hard thing where like making the game, number one, the motivation, the time, the effort, the troubleshooting, and then putting it out there. And then there's all the things with reviews and exposure and trying to get people to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. But then there's the unfortunate thing that this era is about, which is one of those things that gets me really annoyed, is the meta to releasing a game. There's scams when it comes to ratings and exposure. And before Gerbil Physics 2 was launched, I was always watching Xbox Live indie games and always downloading everything and always trying everything, all excited to find something cool like Constrictor, Explosionade, Shoot One Up. There's numerous titles. Oh, the Streets of... It's based on the title, Streets of Fury. Is that a real game? Or is it Streets of Rage?
Yeah, Streets of Rage. Yeah, back on the Genesis. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so Streets of Fury is the Xbox Live indie game one. That's a really good one. But that's gone now. That disappeared back in the day. But I was watching all of them, and the thing is, as I was watching, Gerbil Physics was in that top 20, and you had to be in the top 20 to sell, ratings-wise. Mm-hmm. And people had faked ratings. And there was a guy who made a beer game. I forget what it was called, but it was a drinking game that was focusing on beer. And the guy spammed his rating with 5 stars to get into top rated. And of course, Microsoft saw, banned the guy. And the whole thing was people weren't allowed on the forums to discuss it. Like if someone posted in Microsoft's forum saying, what happened to that beer game? The topic would become locked. The person would become private message about, you don't talk about that. And then you move on. If you talk about things that involve gaming the system, Microsoft will immediately clamp down on that. So it's like one of those things outside of it to discuss it. Like I had heard from Kevin about the beer game, and he was like, yeah, they spoofed their rating and did a bunch of 5 stars on it. And as I was watching the Xbox Live Indie Games, I started noticing one game in particular, its rating was not changing, but it was going up the charts. And I was like, how's it doing that? And as I was watching day by day, whatever game was above his game was getting its rating destroyed.
Really?
He was spamming them, because the thing is, Microsoft knows when you give yourself a bunch of 5-star ratings, they know, and they can cut you out of the indie games program. But this guy had discovered that if you go onto just an internet browser on a random computer and just log in with random emails to Xbox.com, you could drop ratings on games. And so he was throwing 1-star ratings on all the games to destroy, and eventually he got up to Gerbil Physics. And he knocked us down by about 1.5 stars. We went from 4 and like a little over 4 and 3/4 star to barely a 3-star game.
My gosh!
He attacked his way up into, eventually when he got to like the top 4 or 5, those are games that have thousands of ratings. And so he just nuzzled his way up there into that. And I was telling Kevin before we released, I was like, there's this guy attacking everyone's ratings. And then what I called the Xbox Live Indie Games ratings war began. And everyone figured out what the guy had done, but nobody knew who the guy was. So all of the developers in Xbox Live Indie Games started attacking each other with 1-star ratings.
Oh, man.
It was the worst. I saw so many good games get introduced, jump in with their first 20-some ratings into the top 20 rated, and then all the other developers would just spam whoever it was with as many 1-star ratings as they could muster and just kick him out of the charts. It was ungodly. And I told Kevin before we launched, I was like, I don't think we should launch Gerbil Physics 2. There's a ratings war going on right now. And he thought I was being paranoid, like tinfoil hat on. And I was like, no, I think we should blow the whistle to Microsoft, let them know what's happening, and tell them the exploit everybody's losing, even if that costs us our license. Like, even if they say, hey, you're aware of this exploit, we're going to ban you from making games. I was like, we're just going to launch and get destroyed. I guarantee you.
Man.
And so, he insisted that we just launch anyways, and we did, and we shot up into the charts, and sure enough, a tidal wave of about 100 1-star ratings just wrecked us out of the charts like nobody's business. We were still in the new releases, and people were buying the game, and we were getting money just like we did before, and then it just disappeared off the face of the planet, and it was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. And so Microsoft eventually tried to solve the problem by increasing from top 20 to top 40, and then they just got rid of the top rated. And it was like they should have just acknowledged that it was all the 1-star ratings and removed them from the system. But, I can talk from my armchair like that's an easy thing. But it's like it was probably a really difficult thing to go in there and get rid of all the 1-star ratings. So they just got rid of the top-rated category completely.
Golly! Go ahead, Goose. I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
Long story longer. At that time, someone in the forums had posted, hey, let's all pony up, because nobody has sales data of anyone. And someone said, let's just post our sales, like downloads versus sales, and see what sells on Xbox Live Indie Games. And so all sorts of people started posting, like, I had 7,000 downloads and 200 purchases, that type of deal. And so we posted our sales versus download data. And as it turns out, our attach rate for Gerbil Physics 1 originally was the number 2 of attach rates of all Xbox Live Indie Games that participated in this forum.
Oh my gosh, really, Goose?
Number 1 was Avatar Drop. If you remember that one. I don't know if you remember it or not.
I do not remember that one, Goose.
Avatar Drop had an attach rate of about, I think it was like 75% of the people who downloaded it bought it. And it was about 68% of the people who downloaded Gerbil Physics 1 bought it. And then after Gerbil Physics, it drops all the way down to about 22% with number 3, and then about 12% with number 4, and then it goes down to 4% and under for everybody else.
Oh, man, that is a significant drop-off.
Yes. And the thing is, when we released Gerbil Physics 2, even though it got attacked out of the charts, for the brief time that it was there, it became the number 1 attach rate of all Xbox Live Indie Games.
That's amazing, man. God, dog, that is amazing, Goose, man.
Which is meaningless money-wise. I'm sitting there going like, that meant nothing to me. So it was at about 85 or 86% of the people who downloaded Gerbil Physics 2 bought it. And a lot of people didn't even download the trial. They just immediately bought it.
Oh, my gosh.
So that was when Microsoft noticed us. So it was one of those things where as much as, we got destroyed and the sales figures for Gerbil Physics 2 were trash because we only had that first couple weeks and that was it. And Gerbil Physics 2 had what developers refer to as a tail, where we got revenue for a good year and a half out of it, So Microsoft had contacted Kevin, and they said they were running a promotion where they were promoting 3 Xbox Live indie game developers into, air quotes, like real developers with achievements. And we were one of them. And so I got involved in the calls, and they were basically bringing gerbil physics from Xbox Live indie games over to Windows Phone. And we were making an official canon game with Xbox Live achievements and everything. And man, it felt good the first time testing an achievement that you made yourself and being like, yeah, I'm real now, There was something about that moment on the partner net that just felt good. Man. But, long story short, this is once again with the meta. Microsoft was telling us that, not to expect super great sales on Windows Phone, but they said the thing they're going by to determine whether our game was a success or a failure was its rating. They said if we can stay above 4 stars, they will officially consider us a success in their eyes. And we launched, and the thing is, we were playing the game honest. We let our game launch, and, 4 and 5 star ratings started rolling in, and we were like, yeah, we're a success.
Man.
And then we got hit with our first 1 star that said that our game ran terrible on every Windows Phone imaginable, and it ran better on the iPhone.
Oh, really?
Which it didn't exist on the iPhone. And I was sitting there going, wait, what? Why is this saying we're running better on iPhone? Right. And then we got our 4 and 5 star ratings started flowing in again, and then we got another 1 star rating that said that the guy bought 18 Windows phones and they all red ringed, and this game runs like crap on the Windows Phone, but it runs better on iPhone, and he was going to throw all his Windows phones in the garbage and go back to iPhone, and I was like, what is this?
What's going on here?
And when you've only got those handful of ratings, a 1 star rating is killer. The first one took us from like a 4 and 3/4 star rating down to about a 3-star game.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was bad. And then after that, that's when trolls started showing up, and we started getting where like some guy would dump a 1 star rating on us and say, I can't believe this developer has the nerve to charge $2.99 for a game. If this was, say, $1.99, I think I'd change my rating.
Oh, that's whack, man. That's ridiculous.
It was killer. It was killer. And so it was weird just seeing people who would post, like, BS reviews based on, like, just they only own an iPhone, and you can just log into the Windows Store with an email and just dump 1 star ratings. So that was happening, and our rating got to the point where it was like 3 and 3/4 star rating. We were still selling, and we made way more money on Windows Phone than we ever did on Xbox Live indie games, and bajillions times more money than we did releasing on Android.
Wow!
Because that's the thing, the exposure. We were an official Microsoft game, so we had that exposure, and we were being featured and spotlighted, and we appeared in several of their marketing things, and we'd see that surge in money each time they feature us. But since our rating didn't get above 4 stars, officially that was like we were officially dead to Microsoft, which was like the tear shedding, because and that, mind you, this was still Matric era. And so so all of the contacts we knew at Microsoft were all lost in that corporate shuffle. So it's like, that's when the phone line went dead, and we were like, all right, we've got nobody we know at Microsoft to continue with business relations, because they're not there. And officially on the record, our game was under 3 stars. And the thing is, just like with Xbox Live Indie Game, I started watching the Windows Store and watching Windows Phone games get released. And that's when I learned the secret of the meta, which was when an iPhone game called iStunt released on Windows Phone. The moment that game came out, it received 200 5-star ratings.
Oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me.
And, Keon, every single one of those reviews were written in Mandarin.
What?
And only had 2 characters for each of them.
You gotta be almost
and I said,
cursed. Whoa, you gotta
can go
be
to
kidding me.
You can go to iStunt yourself and scroll down to the bottom of their review section and look at those first 200 5-star ratings, all written in Mandarin, all with 2 Chinese characters apiece. And I sat there just looking at it like, how did this dude get 200 people in China to write reviews on his game the moment he releases? So I copied and pasted those 2 characters into Google Translate, because I was like, I wonder what these Chinese people have to say.
Right.
So those reviews said things like, good time, time fun, game fun, fun time, fun, time, game, good. And I'm going, wait a minute.
Come on. Somebody's scamming the system here, man.
It's a bot script from a Chinese, what do they call them? The marketing firm, where you go in and you hire a Chinese marketing firm to go in and scam rate your game. You pay for the amount of ratings. They go in, but apparently I guess the iStunt people forgot to tell the Chinese scam company to write the reviews in English.
Blew up their whole spot. Oh my goodness.
And all those ratings, like, once I started reading, you know, time, and game as the reviews, which occur multiple times in the reviews, it's just a bot script that's just logging in with a fake email address, leaving a 5-star rating, and dumping from the English grab bag. 2 words.
Oh my gosh, man. Who in the world knew this was happening? Go ahead, Goose.
Nobody attacked that rating. Nobody posted a 1-star rating with, oh my god, I can't believe this game is $2.99. Like, us with our plebeian, like, 20, 30, 50, and then 80 ratings, like, they had the 205 stars immediately, so their rating was officially protected. And it's like, one of my buddies asked me about, like, when he was getting ready to make one of his own apps, and I was like, dude, you hire a Chinese PR firm to go in and scam your rating with 5 stars, because if you don't, marketing firms for competing cell phone companies will go in and dump 1-star ratings on your game saying it's better on their cell phone when it doesn't exist there. And then trolls will show up and start demanding things of your game with 1-star ratings as the ransom.
God, dog. You know what, Goose? This is inside baseball, man. I would have never believed that these kind of antics were happening behind the scenes.
It's the meta, man. It's the meta.
This is amazing. You know what? This actually leads me to, because, this really went a place where I didn't even know we were going, Goose. I'm gonna be honest with you. I
just want to mimic the Inner Circle podcast with their Seamus Blackley interview. No NDAs, man.
Yes,
no NDAs.
Yes, man. Definitely check out the Inner Circle podcast. Those guys are awesome over there. That was a fantastic interview. You're absolutely right, Goose. But this is the question I want to ask you, Goose. You know, since you have been on that development side and have really been on the front line and seen how things really can get real messy and dirty and people are not playing the system honestly, does that give you any kind of empathy for these developers, you know, like your Ubisofts and EAs? And let me go into detail of what I mean. You hear nowadays that all of these, you know, these AAA games or different developers are what's the word? Lazy. They don't put their best foot forward. They're halfway doing the game. You know, they're not, you know, giving us the best product possible. How do you feel about that, being on that side of the fence? You know, hearing these, you know, these different reviews and people saying this and that about these various games. Because for me, personally, I don't think that developers are necessarily just giving a half-footed, you know, effort on the games that they're making. I believe that sometimes budget comes into play, marketing comes into play, and also the time that you have to actually develop a game actually comes into play as well. So how do you feel about that when you hear, you know, various people or websites saying that, you know, they half-baked the game and, you know, it was a half effort and, you know, these developers are lazy? It's
always a hard story because it's keeping it 100% honest and everything. Out of all my friends that I grew up with, whether high school or college, I am single-handedly the least talented of all of them because all of my buddies have worked or currently work or former employees of companies like EA, Activision, Vivendi Universal, Blizzard, Sony Santa Monica. It's like, you name it, I've got a friend at the studio. Other than Ubisoft. Ubisoft is the only one that I don't have any friends at. I assume since, you know, in France.
Oh, yeah.
But Vivendi's in France, and I got friends who work for Vivendi.
Wow.
So, but I get all the insider word from all my friends about it, where I'm always like asking them, where I'm like, okay, man, so give me the scoop, what's going on with this game? And you know, they break their NDAs with me, except for one of my buddies. It's Sony Santa Monica. He is not willing to talk, unfortunately, about what's going on there, which has me really worried. And I'm like, oh no. But
yeah.
with all these companies, it's one of those things where when people talk about armchair critics and people saying, "Oh man, why don't they just do X?" And it's like it's way harder than that. And there's millions and millions of dollars involved here. And imagine, you're that millionaire, that multi-bajillionaire, and all of the internet is screaming at you, "Don't you like free money? Why aren't you making this one game? Why aren't you bringing Shenmue back? Why aren't you bringing Knights back? The only reason it failed was because it was on Dreamcast. Oh, the Wii is the perfect system for re-releasing Knights. Come on, Sega. Spend millions of dollars researching and developing a new Knights game, millions of dollars marketing it, and I guess I'll buy it when it's on sale."
Oh, Goose! My goodness.
It hurts. It's one of those things where, like, I don't want to...
that's so truthful, though. Go ahead, Goose.
It's so hard to not dictate prices to a developer. It's so, like, I'll see a game and I'll be like, $19.99, oh man. But it's, when you're on the receiving end of that, and it's like, you made your price, and it's like, I'm sitting there going like, I made our game, we decided to make our game $2.99, and there's still the jerks that say, "But it's not $1.99, 1 star." And it's like, you gotta be kidding me. So I try to support a developer when they release anything at whatever price, except for when it's just too ludicrous, when it's just so far out there, and even I can go like, I can't see myself spending that money, Like, Virginia came out at $9.99, and it's like, I know it was just an interactive movie, like a walking simulator, but I was like, it's $9.99. It's less than the price of a movie. I'm just gonna walk into it and see how entertaining. And it was nice. I was like, it was alright, but I was like, I know every gamer with the air quotes that bought it would be like, $9.99 for a walking sim, F this. And I'm like, it's a hard thing. It's so hard determining all that. And there's so many millions and millions of dollars involved, and there's so many scams out there. And it's one of those things where it's like, do you play dirty? Do you play ball? Do you do the thing that they want you to do? Mm-hmm. Do you hire the Chinese scam companies to come in and give you the 5-star ratings? Do I buy out the ad-driven media websites by buying ad revenue and setting my rules that say if you don't give my game this much of a review, then I'm pulling my ads from your ad-driven website? And you've heard it on so many ad-driven media websites these days where they constantly preach whatever it is that's based on who their biggest sponsor is. And games come out and they're giving the reviews where it comes from a company that isn't buying ad revenue on the site. And they're like, "Oh, it's terrible. Oh, I'm so super critical of this game." And
that's true. That is true, Goose. You're absolutely right.
There's a lot. It's a loaded question and a loaded answer, Keon. I'm hoping I'm giving at least some light onto it without having to do the whole naming names of it. But it's a rough thing releasing games, man. It's a hard thing to get something to catch on, and you always want it to be that dream, the one thing that gets out there. And woof.
Yeah, that's true. I actually on the podcast I was asking the question, and Cody actually gave me a really good response that I didn't really take into consideration. I was actually asking, should Microsoft let 343 Studios and the Coalition work on games outside of Halo and outside of Gears? And Cody was actually saying he doesn't think that's going to happen because, if they take that chance and they spend millions upon millions of dollars on a new IP and it flops, that might put the actual studio out of business. It could totally collapse the actual studio. So what they'll do is, even though we get tired of it, we would love to see new IPs come out from these studios. But what Microsoft would rather do is just keep feeding us the same games that they know are going to build that revenue and are going to be basically safe bets, that they know they're going to get a return on, at least some of the money that they put up. Do you think that that's pretty much a pretty accurate statement?
Actually, my opinion on that is, I don't want to sound super negative or jaded, but imagine you're applying for a game at a video game company, and that video game company is called Grand Theft Auto Incorporated. And you go work on a Grand Theft Auto game and another Grand Theft Auto game at Grand Theft Auto Incorporated, and you start posting online, "Man, I'm so bored of making Grand Theft Auto games at Grand Theft Auto Incorporated." And it's like, Maybe you should be putting your resume out there. It's
Right.
343 Industries, named after 343 Guilty Spark from Halo, made with the explicit purpose of putting out Halo games. Black Tusk Studios renamed the Coalition after Gears of War, because they're going to be making Gears of War games. If you're bored making those games, you can go to another studio, and it would be nice if they'd allow a small team to make some small game just off to the side. That would be cool if they had their own game jams, where it's like, let's make, not to relate it to be egotistical and relate it to myself, but Gerbil Physics 1, make it in a month and a half, just bang your heads together and go, let's just bang out a real simple and easy game, release it on Games with Gold. Like, here's something Coalition did just for fun. We're giving it away for free on Games with Gold.
You know what? That's interesting because that's actually, wow, that's amazing. That's what Cody Clark had actually said. He thought that it would be a better strategy to do maybe a AA game, and put it out there instead of going all the way with a AAA to just get some feelers, and that way it's not a high risk, involved with a whole boatload of money. So I can definitely see that. I just wish that, the thing about 343, for me, personally, Goose, is I know that they actually inherited Halo. It's not something that they built from the ground up like Bungie did.
Right.
And since Bungie has left, Halo has not really been the same as it was when Bungie was at the helm. And to me, I think that 343, they need that game that they actually can put their own stamp on. Something that they can, hold their head up high and say, we actually built this, we made it from the ground up, and this is 100% us. This is what we're giving you. And I understand that would be, it could be a big risk, because if it flops, my goodness, I don't want to see 343 go out,
Right.
But I think that to a certain extent, it might work out. It might be worth the gamble. If they could come up with a good enough idea of what this next project could be, possibly.
I think they wouldn't, even if they had the chance to make one AA or one AAA, they wouldn't flop as a studio. I mean, they got Microsoft money. At most,
true.
They'd see some people get laid off or what have you. But what was I going to say? Oh, never mind. Thought just popped.
Hey, that's all right, man. That's okay. But I just figured that maybe they would do that because this year at E3, and I know we're kind of going off a little bit off of the actual development, but since I have you, and it's just great to be able to talk to you because you can actually talk from a developer's standpoint. But to me, Microsoft, they've been showing off the Scorpio. It's a powerhouse. It's a beast. Nobody knows 100% what it's going to be, able to do. It's specs out there and a lot of speculation, and people are saying that it can do 4K. All of this great stuff. Just amazing stuff that it can do, but we haven't seen it, as far as like in a true demo on a stage. To me, Microsoft, they're going for the power, but everybody is saying, and as I sit back and I think about it, everybody's talking about the games. Now, third party, they're always going to be there. That's no doubt about it. And what Phil is saying is, if you want the best experience, get a Scorpio for the third parties. That'll be the best place to play. But people are saying that these exclusives are lacking. And they're not really, giving the exclusives that people want. State of Decay 2, I'm not really interested in that. And Sea of Thieves, not really my thing. Crackdown, yeah, I would be pumped up to play Crackdown 3. That would be awesome. But
Indeed.
yes, indeed. But my question is, with that being the case, do you think that Microsoft, at this stage in the game, can actually stick to the safe bets, and that's third party and these same games that we've been hearing about for years now? Do you think that they should stick with that, or since this is a big rollout of a new console, that they should be taking more risks to let people know that they're in this for the long haul.
Well, we know they're in it for the long haul. It's one of those things where, like, I'm not very insecure about Microsoft's presence in the video game industry. Like, they want this piece of the pie. They're just adjusting what they do. And the unfortunate part is that they have to always deal with the nonstop, like, assault of criticism and over-criticism. And damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because you know, if Microsoft did exactly like Sony and literally announce every single game they have in development up to 2020 and the next system and put the question mark at the end of every trailer, like, where's any date? And it's like, never. And then delay and delay and delay. They'd get crucified for having no surprises. They'd be crucified every time any instance of one of their games got delayed. And just, if it got released eventually, it would just be finally that game, you know?
You know what?
So,
go ahead, Goose.
It's two standards, and everybody's aware of it. Everybody sees it. Everybody knows it. And it's just one of those shrugs where I'm like, I know there's always going to be the double standard, but I know they're going to deliver the games that not necessarily all the games that I enjoy, because I'm not that one-sided, like, oh my god, everything Microsoft does is amazing. I'm like, dude, I really look forward to Crackdown. I hope they delay Sea of Thieves, because, what was it, like 2 months ago they had the announcement of, we added a skeleton to the game, and it's like, okay, that's not ready to be released yet. Kind of like all my misgivings about, I was warning everybody before Mass Effect Andromeda. I was like, I don't think that game's gonna, I was like, we went from 2 years ago, it was dudes at Cintiq's talking about how passionate they are to make a Mass Effect game. Last year was when they first showed us footage of it in action, and we were hearing about how lead producers were leaving left and right. Over and over.
I remember that.
And then Peter Moore, when it was 2 months before the game was supposed to launch, Peter Moore was like, that wraps up my resume, I'm out.
Yep, that was it.
And it's like, you figure Peter Moore would have stayed for the release of Mass Effect Andromeda and been front row center stage going, and now my final piece de resistance. And I was like, dude, I don't think this game's any good. I was like, it's gonna be buggy as hell. They went from 2-year development cycle.
Oh man, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it, man. It was alright. It wasn't that bad.
But back to the point though, was Sea of Thieves is shaping up, but I was like, dude, it's not ready to be released this year. If they release anything, it's gonna be a public beta. They'll be like, this winter you can play Sea of Thieves and start streaming it, and we'll just get it finished next year. But it is a year where Microsoft, sure enough, has the as Sony said in previous years about themselves, saying that their lineup was sparse, and it's like, yeah, this is a sparse year. We got our Crackdown, which I love. That is all I need, is to be going through collecting agility orbs till the day the sun the sun stops setting. And State of Decay, I'm looking forward to the co-op, but I officially don't get excited about games until I see gameplay. I don't care about pre-rendered CG trailers like.
I'm so tired
they've shown so far of. Yeah, that's all they've shown us of State of Emergency, and I'm like, I really look forward to E3, because if it's good, I'll be like, hell yeah, pardon my language, but if it's not, I'll be like, no,
right.
It's got a bunch of timers on it. Everything's about running everywhere in 30 seconds, and I don't like being rushed, so boo, you know. Yeah, this E3 is going to be humongous. This E3 is shaping up to almost like 2013. There's so much nervousness and so much expectations, and everyone always forgets 2012, which 2012 is when we were all panicking about, you know, what my job is now, the USPTO, patents. Every article online was posting, oh no, Microsoft just published another always online DRM patent. Oh no, Sony just published another online DRM patent. Oh no, Sony just published the, what was it called? The dreaded burn disc. Do you remember that patent Sony had?
No, what was that? What was that, Goose?
Every disc, when you bought a disc at a store, it had a section of writable code at the beginning of the disc, and when you popped it into your PlayStation 4, it wrote your PlayStation handle on the disc and your account, like an account name and account number to it, and that was the only account that could access it. Which, you know, spoiler alert, that's why you can't change your PlayStation names.
Oh my gosh!
Like,
my mind is freaking blown. Are you serious? Please repeat that again to the listeners. Please repeat that again.
That's why you can't change your username. It was all part of Sony's DRM patents. But we were all reading these patents. We were all panicking about it and going, oh my god, is the next generation going to be always online? Is Sony going to burn our discs and make it so only our usernames can access the account of the disc, and it can't be resold to a store ever? Is Microsoft's going to always require an online connection? Is it going to be we were all dreading no disk drives. that discs were going to be like Sony was going to have a disc, but they were going to burn it, and Microsoft wasn't going to have a disc at all, and it was going to be digital only, no refunds, always online. And we were in such a absolute panic state before E3 that 2013, everything hinged on it, and it became that hate wave when it hit. And this generation going up to it, we're going into this E3, and everyone's in a panic over what's going to happen with this. Is the Scorpio going to be some gigantic, like, monstrosity of price that's going to ruin everything, or is it going to be this savior at $400 that everyone's going to switch from PlayStation over, and then Sony's finally going to go out of business because they're in such dire financial straits?
Oh my gosh, Goose! I mean, my mouth is literally it was wide open the whole time you were talking, man. I'm still stuck on that being the reason why you can't change your PlayStation username. That is, man,
it's so key, integral into their system that it's one of those things where in order to get rid of that, they have to literally overhaul, and like there has to be a point where that Sony announces E3, hey, sorry everybody, we're shutting down the PlayStation Network for 3 months, and everyone freaks out, and then they go, but don't worry, it's coming back 100% new, because Microsoft already did this. Microsoft already did it between the original Xbox and the Xbox 360. They ditched the original Xbox Live. That's gone. Because they said, remember originally, they said there's so many features they want to add, so many things they want to do. They also wanted you to be able to change your username, and that required a whole
that. That is so true, Goose. Go ahead, man. Sorry.
Microsoft did it early, and that was the time to do it. And Sony held on to it for too long. And so they're sitting on that archaic. The PlayStation Network has always been the same PlayStation Network, and the whole thing was optimized to run on a cell processor. And that was the whole thing going into this generation that took them so much time, and why so many changes couldn't go through is because they were sitting there server rack by server rack dismantling all the PlayStation 3 servers and then reformatting them and putting them up as new PlayStation 4 servers, which is why if you plug in your old PlayStation 3 and try to take anything online, you will be shocked that almost no games go online on PlayStation 3.
Whoa.
Can you boot up any of the old? Any of the Resistance games? Any of the Gran Turismos? Do any of them go online? You're lucky if you can find one.
Oh my gosh, man.
Because they quietly shut every single one of them down. It's like Microsoft didn't need to do it. I went back online when I bought, I'm trying to do the collection thing of everything. And it's like, yeah. The Xbox 360 was the SNES of its generation. So I've been trying to buy like all the 360 games. And there was a point where I bought Tom Clancy's Hawks. If you remember that game.
I remember that game. That was the pilot game, right?
Yep, had a flight stick and everything. I plugged it in and got ready to start that game up. And out of random morbid curiosity, I was like, there's no way this game has any online or even an online community. So I booted it up as an online co-op campaign for anyone to join. And sure enough, as soon as I started the game, some random dude jumped into my game and was flying side by side with me.
Oh my gosh, really?
And I was like, there's people playing Tom Clancy's Hawks? And I was like, and Tom Clancy's Hawks can still go online? And it's like, yeah, very rarely. It's only games like, I think it was Chrome Hounds shut down its servers, and that was From Software who had to pay for those.
I remember Chrome Hounds.
There's only like 2 or 3 games that shut down. But yeah, the PlayStation 3 doesn't do online anymore. And it's very quiet that, that Sony shut that all down just to re-optimize the PlayStation Network. It's still the same PlayStation Network, but now it's re-optimized for PlayStation 4 instead of for the cell processor. That's why when the generation began, why so many developers had such a hard time is because they could not get anything to work on PlayStation 4 because of the whole PlayStation 3's online. When I talked with my developer buddies and I was like, so how are things going? And they're like, dude, Battlefield can't even maintain a lobby on PlayStation. It can on Xbox, but they couldn't even get it to turn on with the PlayStation Network, and that's because it was built for the cell processor.
Gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners out there, you got to give it up for Goose. God, dog. Amazing information.
No applause, people, please. None. Just go like, wow, and then be like, yeah, that makes sense. Because you keep wondering why it takes Sony so long to make an update to the PlayStation Network, and it's like, that's why. They technically need this to happen. As much as people will be like, oh, it's such an outrage, but with the Scorpio coming, Sony can't do that. They can't shut down the PlayStation Network for 3 months and say, it'll come back better than ever, we promise. But it's what they need to do, and it's one of those bitter pills to swallow that financially they can't do. And if Microsoft gains the headway, we're going to see some major shifts because the video game industry has been on a down and down. It's one of those things where, like, I pointed out to Cody, there's a company called Chemco. Do you remember them?
The name does sound familiar.
If you saw their logo, you'd recognize it because they were prolific back in the PlayStation 2, original Xbox, GameCube era. They delivered a lot of trash shovelware games based on usually movie IPs or comic books or whatever.
Okay.
They're a Japanese developer. When I looked up Chemco, because I played Batman Dark Tomorrow, I think it was, and it's literally one of the worst video games ever made. And that's when I was like, who made this trash? And I was like, oh, Chemco? And I was like, let me look up their Wikipedia to see what they made.
Yeah.
And Chemco was one of the first Japanese studios to, air quotes, go mobile. And the result of that was they pulled the Konami before Konami. They said, F you, AAA development, and they went all mobile. And the end result of that was their stock price increased by about 1,000%.
What?
They were the first company to fall for mobile in Japan, and that was the cause of the basic developer apocalypse that has been happening in Japan with Chemco. They made so much money by ditching AAA development going mobile, and we started losing all of our Japanese developers, which is one of those things that so many people cling so hard to PlayStation because they think that's what's bringing, RPGs or whatever along. It's like all the developers are leaving it whether we like it or not. It's just where they're going. And here's the thing that everybody hates. And it's like, I mention it again. I mentioned it to Colin about 1 billion times, but he never mentions it on air.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched what happened to Konami's stock price after they said F you to all of us?
No, after you mean the Metal Gear debacle with Kojima and all of that. No, I haven't kept up with the stocks. I know that they're into the pachinko machines, though, right?
Yep. They went all gambling, software and mobile, and a little bit of console, like re-releasing some of the things they did, like they bought, because they started going up, and they bought Hudson, and so now Konami owns Bomberman, and they released that on the Switch. But after saying F you to all of us, Konami's stock price, without all of our money, you notice the comment section where it said, F you, Konami, I'll never buy one of your games again. And it's like, does that matter? Their stock price went up and up and up and up, and now they're at the point where Konami's stock price now is higher than it was at the height of the PlayStation 2 era.
You gotta be kidding me, Goose. The height of PS2?
Konami's making more money now than they ever have as a company. Every single tech company on the planet wants to get their stock price back to 1999, 2000, or 2001. That's when everybody's stock price was at their highest. And I'll tell you this, Konami and Microsoft are the only two companies to ever do it.
Wow.
Oh, sorry. Konami hasn't reached it. They're getting there.
Okay.
But Microsoft is the only, Apple doesn't want to go back to 2000 because their stock was in the garbage and it's at the highest point now than it's ever been. But Microsoft is the few of all the tech companies. Sony would kill to get their stock price back to 2001 and 2000 because it's at 1/6 of its highest value, but Microsoft is as much as people want to say Microsoft's doing everything wrong and the Xbox is failing, no, it isn't. And even on Colin's show, sorry, Colin, to mention you a bunch of times, Colin said if he bought stocks, he'd buy Sony stock instead of Microsoft stock. And I'm sitting there going Sony stock meanders at $30 a share, and it just every time it starts to get over 30, it plummets back down to 26 or 24 or 22, and it slowly tries to reach back up to 30, and it'll never get up to the almost $200 a share that they were at. But Konami is at their second highest high is what they've beat, which is back in the height of the PlayStation 2, and they're trying to reach that 99 stock price when it was at its highest. But yeah, as much as we want to say our money matters and we're all that matters, Aaron's good quote that I like is, "How big do you think your bubble is?"
How about that? Wow.
We all wanted Konami to flop, and they didn't. They prospered,
actually.
And now they're expanding their horizons, and they're only dipping back into console gaming, which a lot of people without looking are saying oh, look at Konami, they're so desperate for cash, they're trying to get us gamers back, but we're not gonna do it. And it's like, no, they're just doing it for spare change. They re-released Bomberman. It was weird the way I listened to all sorts of people who said, F Konami and we hate Konami, and then Bomberman's on the Switch, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna buy that Bomberman game, and I'm like, whoa, buddy. You were saying you were never going to buy another Konami game again, yet, here we are. So this E3 going into it, a lot rides on it. It's huge stakes. Everyone wants Japanese developers to come back, but we have to face the music with it. We're not going to get back. There are tons of Chinese conglomerates that have bought out so many JRPG developers in Japan, and they have declared their mission statements again and again, saying we're not going to return this company to AAA development. It's all mobile from this point on. We're lucky to even get SNK back, because SNK got bought out by a Chinese conglomerate.
Good
that
gosh.
Hamster/ACA. But luckily, the ACA Hamster has started re-releasing the Neo Geo games that have never been re-released on, are they on Steam? They're on Xbox One. I think they're on PS4 as well. And
they are actually.
Goku and that Ace Fighter one and a couple other ones. But we're lucky to even get that. We're lucky as hell, because they said they were not going to do any of that. They said they were taking SNK, and Metal Slug was only going to appear on cell phones from here on.
God dog. Wow.
But the thing that needs to happen, the thing that really, really, really needs to happen is actually the whole Phil Spencer going to Japan. He needs to find single A and double A Japanese developers that need the money to make their games, and he needs to fund them with whatever it is, and if they fail, they fail, and if they succeed, they succeed. But even if all of them fail, he needs to fund that, because the Japanese, the culture in gaming, we don't want to lose that. That's an aspect. It's like when you have all the flavors of ice cream and you're saying, yeah, but we're going to get rid of chocolate. And it's like, dude, we need chocolate. We can't get rid of chocolate, man. Right. Whether you say you don't like chocolate or not, there's a lot of people who like chocolate.
Mm-hmm. So, that's true.
But Phil needs to support Japanese developers, and it's a difficult thing, because there's always the language barrier, the culture barrier, all the different economics and everything about it. Japan is very xenophobic, man.
Mm-hmm.
It is. They do not like outside influences at all in their country. So, So yeah, it's that if he announces this E3 and says there's like a whole division like outside of it, like the whole creators club and thing, and he makes a specific Japanese branch of that would be fantastic. That would be an absolute like, yay, that's an applause moment. But even if the games only sell 16,000 or 60,000 copies, it's like, support that, please.
Right. Absolutely.
Otherwise, they all just die to mobile. So.
Now, speaking of that, Goose, we were talking about this. We had hinted around to it a little earlier off air, but mentioning that Phil Spencer, he had just had the interview. I forgot with who the outlet was, but he actually had an interview, and he was actually discussing Zelda, the new Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Horizon Zero Dawn. And he was saying that, those games, they do great, they make money, but they don't have a long-lasting impact. And basically, just to sum it up, at the end of the interview, people were wondering, does this mean that Microsoft is actually going to possibly stop, doing these AAA games, these AAA single-player games outside of course, the mainstays being Halo, Forza, and Gears. Those three are safe. But outside of those, people are wondering, does this mean that Microsoft will stop doing these AAA single-player games and maybe focus on a more of a monthly model? Because in that interview as well, he was saying that someone needs to make like the Netflix of games, and we know that Microsoft is coming out with that Game Pass, where you're going to have access to over 100 games a month for $10. And basically, he was saying that with that motto, well, using Netflix as the motto, saying that you have different shows on Netflix where it's like a continuation of a season, and you can actually golly, I'm losing kind of my train of thought, but basically people are thinking that means that, could this mean that they're going to piecemeal games out to us, similar to Telltale, where every month you tune in and it's another episode,
more content and more parts of it put together.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yes,
we are headed that way, and it's one of those things where whether Microsoft makes the first move to do it or not, which there's always the backlash, there's always the hate, and then we end up there anyways, because it was one of those things where, I forget what show I was listening to, where someone said everyone was complaining about no always online, no always online, no always online, but the actual true irony is, the moment one of our consoles drops its online connection is the moment we're screaming online, how dare this online go away, I need this online, I need it. And it's like, we've already reached that kind of always online state, whether we like it or not. Our consoles always need that internet. All of our activities, everything we do is always on that online space.
So true. True.
It's the way that it's headed. Things have to change, and it's like I do want to be the dinosaur and still play my AAA games. I like the idea of getting that one big sensational whatever, but it's the amount of money that requires. I understand every company does not want to do that at all. They want to set up a product and a service that you go on to and that you play your game doing this, that, the other, and hopefully buy some microtransactions or pick up new content and add pieces to it as it goes. So that way the pill, if the pill fails, it's less of the size of a pill that you have to swallow. Mm-hmm. But it's just a question of who does it first, because we know Nintendo's not going to do it first.
No.
And everyone wants to root for their company getting it, but it's like we're all going to get there. And it's like whether Sony does it or Valve kind of does it or whatever. It's like I'm not going to boo whatever company does it first. I'm going to be like, okay, cool. Competition is good. Let's see all of the companies do it, and let's see all of them do it well, and let's see all of them improve from each other and come up with better ideas and better ways of doing it. Because it's like now with Microsoft, because all the things they've done to correct everything from 2013, it's ridiculous how catered to I feel when I log into my Xbox. I'm like, oh, I've got the digital refunds now. I've got the Game Pass if I just want to subscribe. I've got all the different things. The interface has gotten to the point where it's so fantastic. And I get tired when I listen to something and there's always that BS bias where like they'll say things like, oh yeah, so Microsoft did another update to make everything better. Oh, woof. Oh, so now we're finally back to the 360. Now it's finally like the interface is finally, we've all this time just to get back to the 360. And it's like, I still play on my 360. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you, before the update, the 360 guide button was slower than the Xbox One's guide button. And post-update, the guide button is 10 million times faster than the Xbox 360. So don't hold bad nostalgia for the 360 and say, oh man, the 360 was perfect. It's like, the 360 had its problems. It was a great system, but it had its problems.
Definitely.
And it's like the guide button then was not a miracle and godsend thing. It's like what we have now is better than what we had then, because I'm doing both.
Man, I couldn't have said it better myself. Mr. Goose, I couldn't have said it better, my man. I guess, man, you know what? I feel like I'm really capitalizing on your time, but I don't want to let you go. I don't, but I know that I'm
There'll
gonna
always
have
be another show.
Yeah, exactly. So, Goose, I guess my last question to you, for anybody out there that wants to get into development, that wants to become an indie developer or even work for someone, whether it's Sony Santa Monica or Ubisoft, what would be some advice that you would want to give to somebody that's trying to start out and get their career off of the ground?
Rewind this episode back to the beginning and listen to that tragic Dan Paladin story. It's all networking. It's 100% who you know. You gotta know the right people to get your foot in the door. Yeah, talent is one thing. Being honest and whatever is, fine and dandy. But if I could go back to my college years and everything, even with my school, they didn't understand. And the thing that I know now, it's 100% who you know. You gotta make sure you make those contacts. You go to those conventions, you ask the person you're talking to. If you go up to a booth and there's a video game there, ask them if they're press or if they're actual production. Press versus production. And if they go, oh, I'm a production member, it's like, great, let's talk. And start talking to them about production and make those friends, meet those contacts, get those silly, stupid business cards that you don't want to, add them on that LinkedIn profile and follow them that way. And then keep up with them and say, hey man, when are you going to be whatever? And then show them your work and talk to them in person, because putting in the resume, it's almost never something that gets looked at. We'll save it for another time. I can tell you a nightmare story of when I actually went into a developer and found out the heinous HR nightmare.
Oh, man.
But it is 100% networking, man. You gotta be good, but you gotta know the right people.
Man, I think that is the perfect place to leave it, Mr. Goose. I think that is perfect, man. I have to tell you, I may sound like I'm at a loss of words right now because honestly I am. I really didn't think we were going to delve in as deep as we did, and I appreciate all of this amazing information that you were able to share with me and share with the listeners. This has been amazing. I truly thank you from the bottom of my heart, man, for being on the show.
It was fun, man. It is a kick to be just live talking to you, Keon. As much as it is listening to you, it's fantastic.
I appreciate that so much, man. I really, really do. And once again, thank you so much for the continued support. It's always appreciated, Goose. Really, man. And with that being said, are there any final shout-outs that you would like to give before we wrap up?
Oh, always cross-pollinate my favorites. So everybody listening to the Analog Circle, take a moment to head over to the Game Enthuse crew. Mm-hmm. Aaron, Mike, and Tiny can always use your views, your likes, your subscribes, etc. They are a fantastic show. Mm-hmm. Colin on the Pressure Cast is pretty good. He's all right. I keep telling that bum to call into this show and give you some words of encouragement, but he keeps not doing it. He likes to get the Keon calls, but I tell you, he doesn't give them. So I don't know if I want to shout out Colin. But what was the other Circle podcast we were talking about? The Inner Circle podcast.
The Inner Circle, yes.
Everybody run back a good 2 weeks and listen to the Seamus Blackley interview. He is one of the original creators of the original Xbox, the guy who's responsible for the Duke controller. He is all sorts of non-disclosure agreement, he's letting loose in that interview. It is amazing what this man is willing to tell after the fact about it. And he is super funny, and he's a super good guy. And so listen to that Inner Circle podcast. And as always, keep listening, of course, to Keon. You're amazing, Keon. Keep it up. Let's see you get past 100 shows. You're amazing, buddy.
I appreciate that so much, Goose. Thank you. Thank you very much. And to the listeners out there that...
Shout out to Cody.
Yes, Mr. Cody Clark. Shout out to that guy right there. The email MVP. Yes, indeed. But listeners, that is going to be about it for this Plus edition of the Analog Circle. And as always, I want to thank you guys for listening. And if you want to get in contact with the show and leave your comments, you can always call in at 443-261-4607, or you can email the show at the Analog Circle Podcast at gmail.com. Mr. Goose, this has been a wonderful, wonderful pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed you as a guest, and this was truly amazing, brother. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime you need me, Keon, I'm there for an interview.
I appreciate it. And with that, guys, you guys take care. Be safe out there. And remember, it is not about the consoles. It's about the games. So until next time, y'all be safe. Bye-bye.